Hi, my name is Liz Graham and I am doing Masterclass 10, Collaborations, Partnerships and Relationship Management.
Hey, I'm Ben Parsons. Welcome to the Player Power Podcast with Elizabeth Graham, talking all things partnerships. Now, Liz.
Yes, Ben.
Or as Elizabeth, as we now call you.
All right.
Where does a partnership work well? When do you see it and you go, hey, if we could replicate that 20 times over, we're winning? What does that look like with an athlete?
The best ones by far, categorically, are always the ones where the athlete has come to the party and absolutely understands their values, their objectives, and how they align with the brand, and they're really clear on how they're going to work together.
So let's break it down in terms of if you're an athlete and you've seen a brand, how do you find what the brand values are to even, because you might think you're aligned, but how do you actually find that whether you're aligned or not?
It's not as hard as everyone thinks. It's actually 5 minutes on the internet, seriously. Normally with big companies or big corporations, you can go onto the website and within a matter of minutes, you can find out their values, their company objectives, their target markets, their customer metrics. Look, it's quite succinct and you don't have to do too much research to actually find that out.
So if you're an athlete and you find a brand that you really like, how do you connect with them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to really start thinking about what you as an athlete want to do from a brand perspective. And 9 times out of 10, you will already be aligning with brands yourself. So, what car do you drive? Who's your telco? Where do you do banking? You're already sort of making those decisions, and big companies and corporates really appreciate that. And really look at that as you sort of committing to them, and therefore they might be more inclined to commit to you. But other than that, try and find big brands or big companies or even smaller brands and companies that already sort of play in your space. So where do you fit with regards to brands and organisations, and who is already working in your sport, and who are you already tapped into, and what kind of networking opportunities are you going to, and who's in that room? Like, what sponsors are already sort of playing in your sport? And then from there, it's a matter of obviously making some, conversations, reaching out and using your networks and using the sports networks to really double down on that.
Okay, I want to take the conversations in 2 tangents. The first of all, if you're playing a club sport and you go to a club sponsors night, won't the club be upset with you if you start being really nice to the sponsorship and then, hey, would you like to sponsor me, the athlete?
Look, I don't think so. I think, depending on the level of sponsorship, every single person that plays in sponsorships or partnerships has different levels of evolution of their partnership. So some of them, and back in the day, it used to just be financial. I'll give you a little bit of money and I get to put my logo on some sort of jersey or training kit. But moving forward into sort of the now and, where return on investment is coming into play and the evolution of what people are expecting for their money, they're expecting those value adds. So as a player, already playing in sort of a warm environment with those kind of sponsors, being able to offer them a value add or a money can't buy experience or some sort of brand or talent ambassador relationship on top of where they're already playing actually brings to life the partnerships and the sponsorship that they already have.
So where does a brand, if you're working with a club and then a bunch of athletes reach out to you, where does the brand go, you're starting to take the piss, versus, hey, that's a really good piece of interaction and yes, I'll pay for that privilege?
So I guess, there's a couple of different sort of, avenues. There's the actual sponsorship property that you've got. And a lot of the time, you will work with that partnership to come up with different activation or leverage opportunities. And some of them will absolutely involve talent. But then there's another sort of level where, you come across in networking events or, at games or at community days, and you come across players or athletes or talent that fit with you and they fit and they understand the value of off-field performance. They understand the value of playing with the kids, doing the extra bit at the community days, talking to people at the corporate events. So not just sitting in the back, coming down to the front, networking and actually speaking to the customers and the clients in the room. And it's those ones that we always look out for, because it's those ones that are almost showing us that they're invested, and therefore it makes us easier to want to invest in them.
So often athletes get briefed in those sort of environments going, hey, you've got to do next Thursday or next Wednesday a dinner. The brief isn't really that detailed and they show up a bit disgruntled because they don't really know why they're there and they get thrown in and they probably were sent a run sheet or something.
Every day, yep.
What's your advice to the athlete in terms of when they first front up and they feel a bit nervous about not getting into that conversation and not really wanting to be there?
We see it a lot. So there's often times where there are players or athletes and they could think of nothing worse than coming to some boardroom lunch or some networking event. They'd rather be doing anything else and the thought of working that room terrifies them. However, you've got to do your time. You've got to do the events. You've got to lean in because the reason why those players and those athletes and that talent get to run on that field or on the court or do their sport is because there's a bunch of corporations, there's a bunch of organisations ultimately funding them to be able to do it, and they do it because they see the value in it. So my biggest bit of advice for that is you might be scared or you might not want to do it, but also the corporates are often sitting there thinking, well, you're the talent and I'm a bit nervous and, I might not want to reach out to you either. But if you're in the room for the right reasons, there will be some sort of like-minded middle ground that you can start a conversation on. And then it's as easy as that. So if you can train and be the best at your sport, put in a little bit of effort, put in a little bit of, research as to who might be in the room, go back to whoever's organised for you to be there, ask for a run sheet or ask for a list, do a little bit of research, see what kind of clients or businesses are going to be in there, and just have it up your sleeve, do a bit of training.
There's only been one athlete I've ever met that handed me a business card whilst they're in their playing career. And I actually was a bit taken back in a good way because I didn't realise. I was like, okay, they sort of understand the room a bit more. But go to an athlete that's not in a sport that has lots of sponsorship and, you're an athlete trying to get sponsorship. So you're not being exposed to a lot of brands. How do you connect with them? Are you going sliding into someone's DM on socials, or are you going to LinkedIn? What are you doing?
Look, there's probably a variety of different ways to do it. Again, I would stress utilising your social platforms for good, not evil. So really working those platforms and creating almost an environment that is feeding into building up your brand or persona. I would definitely start reaching out to the warm, almost sort of the low-hanging fruit. So, for example, if you are in a sport and you have club kit, if you have, even if it's smaller sponsors, I'd start working there and building your way through it. And then normally with sports, doesn't matter what sort of level you're playing, there are additional sort of levels up to the upper echelon of the, whether it's Olympics or the NRL or World Cups, there's always sort of different layers of sponsors. And if you show an interest and a passion, there will normally be someone that will, come to the party at least to sort of have a coffee or a catch up. But when you are going into those meetings, you have to do your work. So what's in it for them? Why are we catching up for the coffee? Where do you see yourself fitting? And why is it you over someone else that I would be interested in talking to? We don't often judge a player by how amazing they are as an athlete. Those ones normally get what they get, and they're normally looked after by, sort of big agents and stuff. And to be honest, they can be really hard to deal with. But the ones that are proactive and show that they're going to offer me as a brand or a company value to either my objectives, my goals, or my customers, my community, grassroots, kids. If you can come to me proactively in a warm environment, in a space that I'm already playing with, and show me why you should be the one that I go with, people will have a coffee with you, no doubt, because we're all looking for the win at the end of the day. My win just happens to be off the field.
So one of the bigger partners in sport, which I won't name, but they spoke to me about how they pay a lot of athletes to come and do a lot of corporate stuff. And their biggest gripe was they never get any thank yous. And I thought it was really a small thing. Like I was actually a bit taken back that that they spend so much money but they didn't get much thank you. What can an athlete do post-engagement or even fulfilling an engagement that makes a brand go, okay, I want to continue to work with them and then continue to pay them money for their ambassador role or social media presence?
Yeah, follow up. If you have a conversation with someone at a networking event, absolutely get contact details and follow it up, because they will be remembering it just as much as you have, but they will also remember if it doesn't go anywhere, or if, again, there's just not much effort or energy placed into their time just as much as your time. So absolutely follow through, absolutely double down. Little things like remembering people's names. Like, often you will come across these people multiple times throughout the course of a season or throughout the course of a year. Remember people's names. This isn't rocket science. Think of some of those interactions almost like a little bit of a job interview. Or when you're pitching to potentially go to a new team, or trying to get a new coach, think about the amount of effort and energy you put into those conversations. Start thinking holistically about your brand and not just always focusing on the field, because your career is, unfortunately, 9 times out of 10 finite. Not a lot of people go on to be, the best of the best in their field. There is that middle ground. And that is just such a great opportunity to use sport as a door opener, use it for what it's worth, use it to get the ins, get the networking, get the connections, and then put in as much effort with that as you would on the field. Because, like I said, you don't have to be the best on the field to be the best off the field. But you have to train and you have to put in as much effort. So, do the community events, play with the kids, learn the corporate guy's name. It's not too hard, I promise you.
So if you're a junior, and when I say junior, you're 14, 15,
Yep.
You're starting to show lots of potential in your sporting choice, but you're not in a cap city, you're in regional. How do you start building partnerships? Like, where do you go? Because you can't ring any of the big blue chippers. Where do you go?
You absolutely start from the bottom. Just like you did in your sport, you start from the bottom off the field. And you would be surprised with how many sponsorship opportunities there actually are out there. So yes, the big blue chippers are probably not playing in your space right at this very point in time. But if you go to your gymnastics school, I can guarantee that there will be a logo on the wall, there will be a local sponsor, there will be probably a book of local sponsors that actually are not only invested in the sport, but are invested in your club specifically in your area. So you already have at your disposal a warm environment of sponsors that are interested in what you do. So then from there, you would absolutely work through that list and figure out, well, which one could I potentially offer value to? And they will be looking for big return on investment, because their money's pretty precious, and especially in the lower levels of sport, it takes a lot to sort of give you hard-earned dollars and put it towards something like that. So make sure that when you start, I guess, tapping into that pool, you get very clear around what you can offer them, why you can add value into their sponsorship of that particular sport.
One of the things we talk about lots is around content, right? So, hey, it doesn't matter what company you work in, whether it's big or small, they're all very content hungry, and they're trying to figure out how to create great content that engages their audience. And I think athletes have a really big role to play inside of it, because they've got a story, they're doing a bunch of things that most parents want their kids to be, which is healthy and active and all of those great things. Where do you see partnerships going with content? Like, back in the day, not that long ago, you did autograph sessions, and yes, they're still around, but they're just not as big as they used to be or as valuable. How do you see the evolution of partnerships working in the future?
Yeah, content and obviously social media and all of those platforms. We'll absolutely see partnerships and sponsorships, especially from a talent perspective, really come to the fore. And it gives or provides, brands or businesses an opportunity to tap into a warm environment of people that are looking to that ambassador as a go-to for entertainment, as a go-to for how to achieve in the sport, but also little things like what shoes they wear, what they eat, what their training regime is, what they like. So it allows brands almost this third-party endorsement within an environment that they might not necessarily not be welcome in, but play in all the time. And they kind of come in on the peripheral and get attached to talent or to, an athlete in a warm and friendly way where maybe, just maybe, the kid that looks, at the athlete's shoes and goes, I want the shoes because that's what you're wearing, well, maybe they might also want your phone too because that's the phone that you're using. And that's kind of like where we sort of try and mould around the edges to sort of say, well, you like him, we like him too. So it's this nice sort of third-party endorsement, chatting to friends at a barbecue. It's all done in the power of your hand. And if you do it correctly, the world is your oyster. You could be creating content, while you've got training downtime, what you're eating for breakfast, funnies with your friends, all of these sort of content opportunities obviously builds up an audience. And if you do it right, because it's, double-edged sword socials, if you do it right and create this beautiful, warm environment, brands will come into it to play with it too.
Okay, you dabble in when it's a double-edged sword.
It's very sharp on both sides, yes.
So when it goes wrong.
Yes.
What do you see is a commonality that goes wrong?
Yeah.
And then what do you think they should do if they have done a mistake? Where have you seen in brand world where an athlete has done the right thing by the brand or been part of it? So.
Yeah, okay, so yes, I think we can all think of 1,000 examples of where it's gone wrong. And I guess I keep coming back to this alignment. If you make sure that the foundation of your partnership that you have with this brand is solid and based on good information, your values are aligned, your objectives are aligned, you're very clear with what you want to do together and where you're going, any conflict that should arise should be quite easy to come together and work together to figure it out. And that's the key here. As long as there's no big bad wolf and someone hasn't done, scandals, the big ones, if it's a smaller conflict, you should be able to come to a resolution together and you work on it together. However, if you come across a situation where there is conflict or there has been, an issue that has arisen, you 100% own it. You do not deviate from the truth. You be honest because you will be found out. You will always be found out. The internet never rests and it certainly doesn't go away. Memes last forever, as certain people, especially athletes, well know. But you absolutely own it because, especially in Australia, we are open to giving second chances if you don't treat the audience and the customer like idiots. So own it, put your hand up, work through it and move on.
We had a dinner with a brand and they were talking about one of their favourite athletes that they work with. And as they were trying to show us some of their collaborations, the athlete had deleted their socials, literally, and they were in a bit of a panic mode. It's
never a good sign, yes.
And then they text the athlete, called the athlete, and the athlete eventually texts back saying, I'll let you know tomorrow. Now, it ended up being slightly not as big a deal as the brand thought, but the athlete defected to another code.
Okay.
What's your advice in those circumstances about keeping your trusted partners inside the loop? Like, because you got to make the right decision for yourself.
Correct.
But you obviously don't want your partners also finding out you just deleted your account and you're making some announcement the following day.
Correct. And, we used to come across this quite a lot. It was, everyone's very open and accommodating with information and you come together and everyone's sort of hunky-dory. But the worst thing and the thing that used to drive especially my execs absolutely crazy was if they found out big significant information, good or bad, if they found it out when the general public found it out, all hell would break loose. And so sometimes it didn't have to be a scandal, it could have been a defection, but the power of letting your inner circle in on those smaller little bits and pieces of information or just giving them a little bit more information than I'll call you tomorrow, giving them a bit of information, letting them know there wasn't any drama and sort of saying that you will absolutely get, we'll call you tomorrow before it's announced or something like that. But when you put them back in the bucket with everybody else, they're probably less inclined to write the check next time you ask for one.
Okay, I want to talk about sponsorship proposal or partnership proposals from an athlete. How much information do you want to see?
If I'm honest, probably not as much as they're going to send. Look, it depends. I guess it depends on how warm they are. Again, I use the word warm, how warm it is when it comes in. So, for example, if I'm sponsoring or playing in this sort of area and I get from left field X or Y, geez, you'd want to be pretty succinct about why I should even read it, because it just doesn't make any sense and it kind of sounds like you've just sent out 100 of them. However, the biggest thing that I would do is right up front, almost give what's in it for me. And by me, I obviously mean what's in it for my brand, what's in it for my company, why are we even making contact? What's in it for me and where do you see yourself fitting? So what's the elevator pitch? A lot of people use it and it's correct. Give me a summation of exactly why we should sort of even move through the document. I would always add appendixes. So 4 to 5 slides max. And everyone obviously deals in presentations or PowerPoints. They're nice and easy to sort of flick around. Content is king. So, colours, facts, figures, but appendicize everything. If we want more information, it is absolutely there. But if you haven't sold us by about slide 4 or 5, it's probably not going to get read.
So there's some really cool tools out there now that can actually make you look half decent.
Half decent, I know.
Yeah, a bit like Canva and
Yes.
Microsoft have got a new bunch of AI tools. When you're putting it in and you have the elevator spiel about why that brand connects with the individual athlete's brand, I want to skip a couple of pages because you've then got to do a justification, and then you get to the money page. Are you putting the money in the first proposal, or is that for a later date?
Look, I guess it depends on what level you're playing at, and it also depends on how you package it up. So, for example, a lot of the community-based sponsorships might be, this is who I am. Here's a couple of ideas how I think we could play together. Here's the level of sponsorships I'm looking for. Gold, silver, whatever. For the bigger ones, you don't normally talk a lot of money, and for a lot of those bigger ones, for someone like me, I know exactly where it's going to sit anyway. You can put the dollar figure on it, but that's not where it's going to land. And then, but with those smaller ones, ultimately, you want to give them a ballpark, especially when you're playing in those little spaces, because they might not have, you might be chasing 10 and they might be looking at playing for 1. But hammer down on the fact that you've thought about how you would play together. So it's not just like logos, yes, social mentions, whatever, but what could you two do together and why would I be interested in taking it further and having a little look?
Okay, so an athlete, it's interesting because a lot of the bigger names, and that not necessarily athletes in Australia, I've had a couple of people tell me how wonderful they are to deal with because they've signed big ambassador deals with them and then they've never read the agreement since then, and they speak frequently and they're always helping each other out. Doesn't matter what it is. They're both perfectly aligned, and then they'll talk about the newbies that come on the scene and they'll pull out the agreement every week or so and really frustrate the brand about, well, you don't paying me to do that or whatever it is. And the brand's feedback to me is they take a very short-term view, right?
Yes, and that is correct. So there will be some ambassadors in particular that will absolutely do your 4 social media posts and your 2 appearances and this and that and the other. And normally you'll find, at some stage they probably don't even know who they're, being sponsored by, and it's sort of being done by talent agents. The best ones that we've ever worked with are partnerships versus sponsorships. So partnerships are all about collaboration, alignment, and building out a program of work or building out the partnership and what it looks like. And then the best ones are the ones that we put the contract in the bottom drawer and we do not pull it out until it needs to be renegotiated again, because we've built this foundation of coming together to deliver on these really great outcomes that are mutually beneficial, right? So normally with an athlete, obviously there's a financial benefit, but normally when you partner with big brands or businesses or even smaller brands or businesses, which will then elevate you into the next tier, which will then elevate you into the next tier, there should be mutual benefit. So you're getting rub off from our brand, you're also getting access to different opportunities. You're getting elevated and promoted from other brands. You're being seen by other companies. So when you work together like that, you shouldn't be just doubling down on the fact that you've done 6 social media posts, because you should want to do the social media posts. You should want to go to the kids' fan days. You should want to go out into the community, because the more you do that, the more you elevate your brand, the more you build your brand, the more you are seen, but the more you work better together with the partner. And then all of a sudden, the next time that they come to dealing with you, it's not this. Now we're tacking on this and this and this. And now another sponsor's coming in because they've seen the work that you've been doing. And all the while, you're sitting here building up this beautiful brand off the field, which will absolutely put you in good step when, or if, unfortunately, if you get injured or if your career doesn't go the way that you wanted, you will have this beautiful off-field environment that you've created, and you will stay relevant.
Yeah, you're starting to see, I think the future holds for everybody, right? If you're an athlete, in the future, if you've got a social media audience that can help the club sell tickets or merchandising or whatever, versus another athlete that has no social media engagement, they're gonna start selecting those people because they're businesses. And if you look at what the NFL's done or the NBA, you're starting to see little trickles of that, and I think that's going to hit. Not in the big sports that there's not enough depth in the community grassroots, but if you're in the big ones, yeah, I think there's enough depth to, we can take a risk on that player because they can help bring fans.
Absolutely. And what you'll also find is in those sort of areas or environments, what you'll find is the off-field team, which is 3 times as big as the on-field team, right? Like the sales guys, the marketing guys, the people volunteering to sell the tickets, the commercial guys in the back of house. When they come across a player where they know is just great to work with, great with the corporates, great with the kids, always putting their hand up to do the additional stuff that isn't on the field, you can bet your bottom dollar that when it comes to doing rosters or picking teams, if they're fringy, you can guarantee that someone's in the back office saying, we really need him picked for next season because he puts bums on seats. And because he puts bums on seats and sells jerseys or jumpers or, shoes, the whole ecosystem of the sport flourishes. So yes, there are definitely times when it gets into that little realm, should we, shouldn't we? The off the field stuff comes in very handy.
So if you're just starting your partnership journey and you're an athlete, give a summary of the areas you think, if you're starting from scratch, you know nothing, or you feel you know nothing, you probably know a lot more than you realise. But what do you do? What is step 1 in your eyes to start establishing partnerships being an athlete?
If I was, like I said at the start, it doesn't matter where you are and it doesn't matter what level you're at. There will be a group of people, sponsors, businesses, small, medium, large. There will always be a group of people helping fund whatever you're doing. So for you to do this, there's a whole bunch of people making it happen. So you start there. Start at the baby steps, just like you did when you were learning how to, play or run or jump. Start there. So figure out who they are and then do some work on it. Train, do some work on it. So go through it. Which ones feel better to you than others? If you had to sort of, cut your teeth on one, which one's the best fit for you and how could you add value to them? And then you go out. So that sponsor for your local club has obviously been contacted by your local club. So start to go, next time they have a sponsors function, put your hand up to go. Put your hand up to be the talent. Put your hand up to, work a community, play with the kids. Start to build out from the actual list that you've got, and there will be a list, and then work with your club or work with the sport or work with your organisation to proactively go to them and say, I'm volunteering my time. I want to help be better in that area. And then from there, it will just grow.
Do you think if you're a female or a rookie that there's enough money in the sponsorship and partnership world to fulfill a complete income so you don't have to have a first, second or third job to be a semi to professional athlete?
Yeah, look, that's a tricky one. I think it's getting better at a rate of knots, and, you only have to turn on the television or, like the Matildas. I mean, look at that, right? it is getting better, and I think everyone genuinely wants it to be better, and everyone's like starting to do their bit to make it better. And you know, it's a long road, because a lot of the times with the sport, the seasons are shorter, or you know, the competition isn't as deep. So there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of evolution to be done. But I think everyone's hearts are in the right place, and I think everyone genuinely wants it to be better. Do I think it's there now? No, I don't. I think there are certain sports that definitely do it better than others, but I don't look at that negatively. I look at it as a journey, and I think we're doing our best, and we're sort of heading in the right direction. It's the work that I do, you know, especially in my, you know, in my working life, you know, it is getting better, and it's definitely at the top of the list as far as, you know, areas that we all want to be better at, and areas that we do want to commit in, and we're doing some great work in it. But of course it can be better, and it will get better, but it's not going to happen overnight. It physically can't happen overnight.
Thank you for your time, your energy, your effort. Is there anything you'd like to leave as a parting gift for an athlete on this podcast? Sport
is an ecosystem. The playing is certainly one bit, but the off-field stuff is just as important. And not many people get to the best of the best. There's quite a lot of people in that middle group, but I can guarantee you, if you train and you put in the effort off the field, you will stay relevant, doors will be opened, money will still come, networking opportunities will still eventuate. You train so hard to be good on the field, start training to be good off it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.